can go.
Hello, everyone. I hope that everyone is well. Welcome to the 21st edition of Creative Mikser. It's our first online edition. Please, I'm very pleased that we have got great experts today with us. Joe Iles from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation from the UK, and Aleksandra Kretkowska from CSR Consulting and the 17 Goals campaign. Our moderator for the day is our colleague from the UK British Council Office, Architecture, Design and Fashion, Parvinder Marvaha. And last but not the least, the co-host of this event is Michał Olszewski, Deputy Mayor of Warsaw. Our focus today is circular economy, its importance for our sustainable common future. I would like to thank everyone from the Warsaw City Council, Janek Krzyżanowski, Dorota Dobrzyńska, Ula Trzeciakowska and Kasia Wrońska for their help in organizing this event. I would like to also thank our British Council colleagues, Weronika Ruszecka, Iza Bonikowska, Joasia Jaszczuk and Magda Pisiewicz for great help in putting this event together. Many thanks to broadcasting team for their technical assistance, and thanks to the Circular Week, because this event is part of this week. My special thanks go to sign language interpreters. You have to know that this event is being translated into sign language, international sign language on English YouTube channel and Polish sign language on Polish YouTube channel. I hope that you will have a great time with us tonight and that we will leave you with some meaningful inspiration. So, Michał.
Good evening, everyone. It's a sheer pleasure to share some thoughts from City of Warsaw, and thanks once again for organizing an event. It's something extraordinary to organize such event in the coronavirus time. So thanks also from my side to all of my co-workers and of course the great team from British Council who made it actually for us this space for the discussion about the circular economy. Just a few words from us, because the real heroes going to present some thoughts which will be hope the inspiration for everyone in not only in Warsaw but in our country, how to get the goals, sustainable goals of circular economy. Actually, Warsaw as a capital of Poland is now focusing on sustainable growth. Especially circular economy is it's a huge advantage for us, but also a challenge because many of us are still producing too much of waste for which is actually going into environment. What we have to do is not only to decrease the volume of waste, but also to think how to make it much more circular. I mean, not only recycling, which is the first thought when we are thinking about the circular economy, but also how to create convenient locality, just to avoid to use too much of our resources, natural resources, which we are using day by day in our activity. Of course, we are also already implementing several projects in this area. For example, we are cooperating with recyclers just to allow to our citizens to dispose the electro waste collection to electro waste, which are free of charge, taken from City of Warsaw and from our households. We also introduced for the first time last year the recycling machines. It's a pilot project which is mostly devoted to show that every bottle doesn't mean every can, doesn't mean it's plastic or paper or glass. It might be very useful when we are putting it through the recycling. And we are also using this project of recycling machines just to show to the society that it's worth to recycling the waste which we have in daily use. Of course, we want to expand our range of activity in this area, and one of our goal for today, for this discussion, is just to look for the inspiration, what we can do more. And I'm pretty sure that it's still a lot of space to change our habits of our citizens, to introduce the new technology in our cities, to use the creativity of not only of our experts but also of the startups, of the members of our society, of our citizens, just to make this big dream of the circular economy happen. So thanks once again for organizing, and now I believe the floor is for our expert and guests, which will share with us their thoughts. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Parvinder?
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Eva, and thank you, Mikhail. That was great. It's really nice to see so many great initiatives coming from Warsaw. My name's Parvinder, and I lead on design at the British Council. I joined a few years ago to curate, program, and commission international projects across architecture, design, and fashion. I lead on our work in EU, Europe, and South Asia, and I'm developing some of our global programs, including Making Matters, which focuses on circular design. As part of this, I run Circular Cultures, a program which spans 7 countries across EU, Europe, including Poland, exploring the language and tools we use to embed circular thinking and creating opportunities for us to share knowledge. And today we'll be exploring the relationship between the circular economy and design. Our 2 expert panelists, Joe and Aleksandra, will present the importance of shifting our thinking from a linear to a circular approach, followed by discussion on some of the challenges on a global and local level. We'll also be taking questions from the audience, so please ask your questions on YouTube and Facebook, and I'll receive them on my trusted phone, hopefully. It'll work, and I will ask the panelists later. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to the panelists before they present. I'm really happy to introduce Joe Iles. He's a circular design program lead at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And his goal is to inspire and empower millions of designers to create products, services, and systems for the economy. He's been part of the Ellen MacArthur team for almost 10 years, working across communications, business, design, and strategy. Joe's helped shape the circular economy narrative, crafting stories and messages to reach new audiences and improve understanding of circular design across the globe. Thanks for joining us, Joe. And I'm just going to introduce Aleksandra before I hand over to you to present. Aleksandra Kretkowska wears many hats. She's the Circular Economy and Sustainability Consultant at CSR Consulting and works with the 17 Goal Aim. She also runs the Circular Economy and Practice website, a knowledge center for business in Poland, and the online Circular Economy Academy, Academia GOZ. She supports companies in their transfer towards a circular economy. And thank you, Aleksandra, also for joining. I'm going to hand over to Joe now to present, and then Aleksandra will present, and then we'll go into a panel discussion with questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Parvinder, for that introduction, and thank you to the British Council and for the City of Warsaw for inviting me to participate in the Creative Mikser today. I'm delighted to be joining you, actually from my parents' kitchen with all their knickknacks and things around. I'm sure we've all joined calls and conferences from some fairly unusual places throughout 2020, and this is one of those occasions. But I'm delighted that through the internet we can speak today. So, as Parvinder says, my name's Joe. I'm the Circular Design Program Lead at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And I'm going to be speaking to you today about the topic of circular design, what I spend most of my time working on, and something that, a phrase that is really just shorthand for design for a circular economy. And if we could just have the first slide up on screen. You may be wondering why I've asked the production team to put up a picture of some old rubbish. It's a fairly random shot at first glance. I'll give you that. But it's one of many photos that I have been informally taking in a personal project of documenting some of the things that get left in the streets and lanes when I'm walking my dog in the morning every day at my home. And I actually really love the image that's on the screen at the moment. And to me, it's an entry point into talking about the circular economy. My favorite bit of this image, which looks like a random assortment of stuff to you maybe, is the Henry the Hoover, a vacuum cleaner. You can just see this particular brand of vacuum cleaner. I don't know how far the Henry Hoover brand has traveled globally, but we had one of these in my house when I was a child. The red Hoover with the smiling face on the right-hand side of the picture there. And on the left-hand side of this pile of rubbish, you can see the packaging. Henry, you can just see it there on the left, the box that this item came in. And on that box, you may not be able to see it in the image, but it says "Built to Last." And this one made me smile when I was walking past it in a kind of sick way, perhaps. And it reminded me that even when we set out with the best intentions to design things that are built to last, sometimes it doesn't work and they get thrown out with the box that they came in. And I find moments like this that I observe when I'm walking my dog and looking at the world around us, I find that they tell us something about the relationship that we have with stuff and the world that we've constructed and invented that surrounds us. And this is just one example of how that world is predominantly operates on a take, make, waste linear model. Mostly, we take finite resources out of the ground, we use them only for a short amount of time, after which they are lost from the economy. And in industries like fashion and plastic packaging, the research that we've done at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation shows that more than 80% of the materials involved in the products and services that we use are destined for landfill. So 80% of the stuff that we take out of the ground and that enters the economy each year is lost as waste. So it's lost either in landfills, incineration, or as we know, painfully, it often leaks into the natural environment. And that results in these shocking statistics, such as one garbage truck of textiles is landfilled or incinerated every single second. And that by 2050, the current rate of plastics use and disposal, there may be more plastics in the ocean by weight by 2050. So ultimately, most of the materials we use, we lose, and most of them are lost after just one short use cycle. And as a result of this sort of thinking, this realization, many people have started talking about the circular economy, which is a framework for solutions that moves us away from that current model of continual extraction and consumption to one that's based on restoration and regeneration. And if you're a designer, a creative, an entrepreneur, or if you have any influence over the products and services around you, you might be asking, you may have heard of circular economy and be asking yourselves, how can I get involved? How can I begin to create things that are fit for this circular economy? And you may be thinking, well, what makes any solution more or less relevant for the circular economy? And really that comes down to design, which is why circular design is such an important topic. The decisions that make something suitable for a linear or hopefully a circular economy, they happen at the design stage. We call it the upstream stage or the design stage. And for some products, that design stage is really obvious. If you think of something like a phone, a beautiful piece of furniture, or a designer dress, we think of those things as designed. But if you think about it, everything around us is designed. Everything is the result of the decisions that are made upstream that influence how we make and use stuff. So things like ham sandwich or a bus network in a city or a marketplace or a supermarket, those things are designed as well. They're the consequences of decisions that are made that influence how we use them. So everything has a design stage, and therefore that design stage and those decisions are absolutely crucial in shifting to a circular economy. So just to be really clear, a circular economy is at its heart about a different approach to the design stage of all the products, services, and systems that are around us. And that approach has at its core 3 principles of a circular economy. Principle 1, design out waste. Stop waste from happening in the first place, rather than trying to clean it up at the end of the line. Keep products and materials in use through things like sharing, repairing, remanufacturing, redistribution, and yes, eventually recycling. And the third principle is regenerate natural systems. When we think about something like a forest or a farming system, an agricultural field, put back what you take out so that system is regenerated and able to provide the things we need long into the future. So when we talk about circular design, we're talking about design for a circular economy. And one important thing to mention at this stage is this whole shift isn't just about designers, trained professional designers. They are really important, absolutely. And they often have the skills and ways of working that can help us in this transition from linear to circular. But it's about way more than that. And at the foundation, we did a small piece of internal research that suggested that there's around 160 million people globally who can have an influence on materials flows. So yes, it's designers, but it's also material scientists, policymakers, founders of startups, and or the CEOs of a large design-led corporate. And all of those people can influence the decisions that are made upstream that can help our economy become more circular. If I could just have the next slide. So by way of summary, design is absolutely crucial for a circular economy. Everything has been designed by someone, from the clothes we wear to the buildings that we live in, the systems that give us mobility and food. And throughout this process, decisions are made that influences whether a product stays in the economy providing value or is lost as waste. And those decisions set in motion how that product is made and used, and whether it stays in the economy or is lost as waste. And those decisions are easier to make upstream. We like this quote from a friend of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Alicia Garmalevich, who says, "You can't unscramble an omelette. Make the decisions upstream, and they're much easier to handle." So you may be thinking at this stage, well, how do I actually do it? How do I practice circular design? At least I hope that some of you are feeling that way. And if you are, you're on the right path. And well, the best place to start with practicing circular design is in understanding that it's a new mindset and a new set of strategies. If I could just have the next slide now. Firstly, it's about this mindset. The mindset here is about zooming into the user's needs and zooming out to the wider system. For the, if we move on to the next slide. When it comes to zooming in, we're pretty good at that, or the designers are typically quite good at that. You may call it, those of you designers among you, user-centered design, about asking how to meet the user's needs. And hopefully us as citizens as well, when we look around us, we usually think that a lot of the things that surround us are meet some need that we have as people. But I'm gonna quote a designer here called Alexis Lloyd. There's an article that I'm quoting from on the screen at the moment, and she puts it much better than I can. Alexis says, "I've been trained in the idea that user-centered design is a humane and ethical approach to design. It's rooted in empathy for people. Therefore, it helps us create beneficial experiences for people, and therefore it's good for society." But then she goes on to say, the experiences we create touch far more than just the end user. They engage with entire interconnected systems that are composed of many different participants. Only some of those are the users we typically design for. So as well as zooming in, and if we move to the next slide there, we also, in circular design, focus on zooming out to the wider system to understand that the user that you're designing for belongs to an ecosystem that is dependent on other elements and other systems. So this might involve asking about the journey of a product, the component or its materials. What happens once they've been used? Are there other people that interact with your creation, the thing that you're releasing to the economy? And are you designing for them? Maybe it's the person handling the waste, or the person doing the repair or the remanufacturing, or the person that buys a product secondhand. And so zooming out is about getting that bird's eye view of the wider system. So that's zooming in and zooming out. And if we move on to the next slide, and we can move on to the next one, actually. Because zooming in and zooming out, that mindset is a great way to start. And then the circular design principles informs a set of strategies. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these right now, because I really fundamentally believe that if you start with the mindset of zooming in and zooming out, you really will, and keep these principles in mind, the 3 principles of a circular economy, you will uncover strategies that are suited to the industry you operate in, or the item you're trying to invent. And importantly, circular design isn't just a checklist or a dogma. And I hope it's pretty clear that the strategies that you might employ for food will be different from the strategies you would use for packaging, for a building, for a transport system, and so on. And even in an industry like plastic packaging, it's not just about one solution. It's not just about durability, for example, but creating solutions that really fit within the system, in which mean that the products and materials never become waste. So I would encourage you to get to grips with the mindset, understand the principles, and then explore the different strategies for designing for a circular economy. And at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we created the Circular Design Guide, which you can find at circulardesignguide.com, with 24 different free methods and activities to help you get started with some of those strategies. But I've said a couple of times, as we move to close now, that I think the best way to get started is to actually do it and to try it out for yourself. And you may be thinking, I'm not a designer, I don't live or work in a design studio. How can I really get started? And I think the best way is to practice this mindset of thinking in systems, of zooming out. And I'm going to show you a quick example here. This is going to be pretty basic if we just move to the next slide. Because I'm not an architect or a contractor, I don't work in construction. But here's what I would encourage you to do is pick an item or a product that you know well, or that you can see around you, and try and map out, try and draw out the linear system. And the production team, you can move through this slide fairly quickly. I've picked a house here. I think you need some building materials. You do some construction. Ultimately, that item may be demolished at some point in the future. You may have some building materials left over and some empty space. There's pollution created along the way. Some people live in the house. They need furniture. They probably need a fridge, a washing machine, perhaps. Those things have to be made as well, so there's more pollution. They might do some DIY and repair or improve their house over time. As they live in it, they throw things away, food, waste, water, other trash, which also probably ends up in landfill. And then those white goods, those fridges and washing machines, they have to get chucked away at some point, because we all know they break down. And then maybe our family, if the team just paused there for a second, our family have some children. Maybe they need a bigger house. They may need to move, or they may need to extend. So this is a very scrappy, messy, linear version of maybe the construction industry today. I've probably got a few bits wrong, but you can see what I'm getting at. And now if we run through the next sequence, try and map out the circular version and try and identify options for circularity. So we have our house again. Maybe this time it's powered by renewable energy, and any excess goes back to the city at large. Instead of demolishing the building, what if it was dismantled or deconstructed, and the raw materials I got back were really high quality? Then they could be fed into creating a new building. I've still got some construction waste and pollution. I haven't figured that bit out yet. But I've got my family, they live there. They still need their things to fill up their house. But what if they accessed them in a different way? Maybe they rented them from a service provider. What if they shared them with their neighbors, or got them repaired locally or made locally at using local skills and labor, a completely new way of accessing what they need. They're still going to chuck stuff out. They still have bins, but what if the things that they put in their bins wasn't seen as waste? And food waste, for example, went to a local farm to regenerate the soil. And then let's say they want to update their style and they need a new chair or a new fridge. What if those things weren't disposed of, but they were repaired locally and went to another family who needed them? So you can see here, just in 5 minutes, which is how long it took to sketch this out, I've already started uncovering opportunities for innovation and creativity that's aligned with the principles of a circular economy. So I'm going to pause there. I think I'm sorry, Pav, I may have gone over time a bit, but hopefully that gives people a starting point on how they can think creatively using circular design as a guide.
Thanks so much, Joe. It was a great presentation. It was worth the minute. We'll go to Aleksandra now. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, hello. If I can ask for my presentation as well. So I'll try to answer the same question, how to become more circular in the different words, and maybe give you some more recommendations. I still cannot see my presentation. Wait a second. If not, I'll just go on without one. So yeah, okay, I'll go. Okay, here it is. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. Because I want to start by telling you a story. I don't know if you know the series The Good Place, but it's about a group of people that dies and goes to heaven, they think. And what's important is that they find out how the hell and heaven works. So if you can go next. They find out that there is a very complicated point system in heaven and hell. And if you do things that have positive impact on Earth, you get plus points. And if you do things that have negative impact on Earth, you get minus points. And then it's all calculated and it's decided where you will go after you die. So the thing is, they find out that everybody are going to hell nowadays because life has become so complicated today that it's very hard to make a decision that will ensure a positive impact. So it's somehow a good metaphor for circular economy because it's a complicated system. It's not easy to implement. That's a graph that's showing the circular economy life cycle. And I will show you now how the bottle of water works in circular economy. So first, if you can go with the animations, please. So I will show, first the bottle is designed, and as Joe explained, that's probably the most important point because 80% of the impact is it's decided on this level. Then it's produced, then it's packed, then it's transported, it comes to the shop, then a consumer buys the bottle and drinks the water, then the consumer disposes of the bottle, and then the city collects the waste. Another company is dividing it into different fractions, and yet another company is recycling it, and hopefully this plastic goes to another plastic bottle. So as you can see, it's a complicated cycle, and there is a lot of companies and organizations involved, from business sector, from government, local government, and consumers are also important in this cycle. So probably the most important part is design, but each and every other part is important as well, because if one organization, one element of this chain fails, for example, you as a consumer would dispose of the bottle into the forest instead of a trash can, it will not be collected, it will not be recycled for sure. So the first recommendation in circular economy is cooperation. You cannot implement circular economy if you don't cooperate within this whole life cycle. This is very important. Second thing that is important, that's a classic dilemma. plastic bottle or glass bottle. Probably if you want to be environmentally friendly and you want to get these plus points to go to environmental heaven, you will choose plastic bottle. And as I said, it's complicated. So as a result, you may get minus points. Now, if you can change to next slide, I will show you results of a research made by Alpla. And they checked the life cycle of a certain bottle of water in Austria, and they found out actually the shortest and the best environmental impact had the plastic bottle from recycled plastic, because the glass was so heavy, it required much more transport and so on. It had the longest ecological footprint. So as you can see, that's another complicated thing. Things are not as they always seem. Another good example of such paradox is on my next slide. That's something that probably triggers you in the shop, the cucumber in plastic wrapping. But the dilemma that the producer of such a cucumber was facing was whether to use the plastic, that of course uses a lot of resources, or to risk food waste. Because this plastic wrapping prolongs the expiry date of the cucumber by 2 weeks. And in Poland, 53% of food is thrown away by consumers. They buy just too much and then throw away the food. It's 9 million tons of food a year. So if you are such producer of cucumber and you want to make sound decision to get plus points to go to environmental heaven, maybe it's better to use plastic wrapping in the end. To know it, you have to measure it. You just have to measure your impact in the whole life cycle. So the second recommendation is to measure your impact, but in the whole life cycle, not only where you would normally measure it, but think about the consequences of your actions for other companies involved in the life cycle. And the third recommendation is to innovate. Circular economy is the new idea, and not always we have solutions on the table. Sometimes we have to think of new ones. There is a set of rules that following will take you to this environmental heaven and get you plus points. It's reduce, reuse, recycle. You probably know this one. And the order is very important, as Joe also talked about. So recycling is at the bottom. First, you have to reduce the use of resources. If you cannot reduce using them, reuse them, keep them alive as long as possible, use them as long as possible. So going back to the dilemma of plastic versus glass bottle for water, if you want to follow these rules that I just talked about, you have to reduce the need of using the plastic bottle. So the answer, plastic or glass bottle, is no bottle. But of course, you still want to drink your water. So what do? You innovate. And here are the examples of what City of Warsaw is doing. And this is a fine answer for that dilemma. So City of Warsaw is installing water fountains in public schools. So kids don't have to buy drinks in bottles anymore. They can drink right from the fountain. But also they are maintaining the all public places where you can pick up natural water. Źródełko Ligoceńskie, it's very popular among Warsawian. It's the old thing, but so you can see that in circular economy, sometimes you just have to refurbish old ideas and they will work very nicely in circular economy. And for the second dilemma, the cucumber, well, you have to eat, and it's good to eat vegetables, so you don't want to reduce that, but you can reduce the amount of packaging used, still ensuring that there is no food waste. And how can you do it? The answer is given, for example, by startup. This is Matylda Szyrle. She's CEO of a very new startup, a food tech company, and she's establishing vertical gardens in the cities. So she already did one in Warsaw. So she's growing vegetables in the middle of the city. So imagine in future you are buying cucumbers just next block, you don't need any wrapping. It will not go to waste. It's very fresh. You just reduce the whole cycle. You make it much shorter. So last but not least, I want to show you some examples from our work. We conduct the 17 Goals campaign that encourage companies to act for SDGs. And within this campaign, we organize many initiatives that are organized according to the rules I described. So if you can show the next animation. Yeah, and the next one. So these are the initiatives that help companies and other entities implement circular economy. One is, for example, Polish Plastic Pact, which is organized within the Ellen MacArthur umbrella. And its aim is to close the loop of plastic in Poland. We also have a coalition of five fraction, where City of Warsaw is involved as well. And it's to help consumers sort out their trash. We have Center for Sustainable Packaging, and we also have the website Circular Economy in Practice that was already introduced. So I encourage you to join these initiatives and to join the 17 Goals campaign, because we have many initiatives that will help you implement some circular economy rules, both in business, but also it's also for other organizations. So thank you very much. That's it. I was trying to be brief to have more time for your questions.
Thank you so much, Aleksandra. That was great. I loved your examples. We'll just wait for, yep, Joe's back and Eva. Thank you. Okay, we'll go into the questions. And actually, my first observation actually is that as we were looking through your slides the other day, Joe had mentioned that he also thought The Good Place was a really nice example. And Joe, can you just tell us why you identified that as a good example for looking at the circular economy?
Yeah, yeah, like I said to you, Pav, when I was looking through Aleksandra's slides, I had this like amazing moment where something that I'd actually mentioned that in a couple of presentations in the past, or since I saw that TV show, and usually people said, I've never seen it, I don't know what you're talking about. I think Aleksandra probably explained it a bit better than me, if I'm honest. But really, there's a scene in that show where they talk about buying a tomato and how we think it is such a simple act. And more and more people, thank goodness, are trying to make a positive impact with the things that they buy. The problem they're facing is that the wider system is flawed. It's in many respects it's broken. So when we try and do these simple acts of good, we find that we engage with a system that is fundamentally linear. As I mentioned, it's extractive, it's polluting, it's wasteful, and it also demeans and devalues a bunch of other systems as well, aside from materials and the pollution side, but also the social systems. And I think in the show they say, when they talk about that, was it picked on a farm that treats its employees well? Was it transported in a way that is safe and clean? All these things. So I think that's the thing that stuck out to me, and that when I watched the show for the first time, kind of a light bulb went off, is that when we try and engage with the economy, even we try and do good stuff today, we are engaging with a system that is flawed and is fundamentally linear and very problematic. So what we talk about with the circular economy, this ultimate vision that gets me out of bed in the morning, is can we imagine a system where it's only possible to make good choices, rather than walking through the supermarket and thinking, how do I pick the tomato or the toothpaste or the T-shirt that's the least evil? Could I not just have a great selection of positive products? The negative ones don't exist anymore. That's a future that I'd love to live in.
Thanks, Joe. That's exactly what I loved about what you said, really. I was thinking, wouldn't it be amazing to go somewhere with only good choices? Like when we now go to organic health food stores and we know where some of that produce is coming from. But it kind of leads on to what we were discussing, which was the role of designers then within that decision-making process, within those results. So if we designed those products with circularity, what would have in the supermarket or where we went, like the Henry Hoover, etc., would already have circularity built into their lifeline. So my question to you again, Joe, so Aleksandra can have a little rest for now, is we kind of talk about designers that would benefit from being more circular and sustainable in their thinking? And how do you think the circular economy provides an opportunity for those designers?
I mean, we talk about the circular economy being the greatest creative challenge of a generation, and I think in the introduction, the deputy mayor said there's still I think he said there's still a lot of space for innovation or something along those lines, and I couldn't agree more. I would say almost all of the innovation that we need for a circular economy has not been done yet. We only have a fraction of the scientific and technical and design, the breakthrough, the industrial breakthroughs that we need, the change in the way that we interact, the way that we dress, the way that we eat, the way that we move around. We only have a fraction of what we need because the economy is still linear. So that to me I find that hugely inspiring, that most of the innovation we need is yet to be done. So anyone can look around them and pick something and say, I'd like to get started on that. I want to redesign that. I want to reinvent that with the circular economy in mind. So I think it's a huge creative opportunity. I've never met a designer who wants their stuff to end up in landfill or in the ocean. They want to leave a legacy. I mean, I think designer or not, we all want to do that. And I think the circular economy provides a way to do that. It can bring a sense of purpose and meaning back to the design and creative professions.
Thank you, Joe. And I guess zooming out to Aleksandra, we've spoken about the designer's role. We also know that companies and brands play a huge role in this, but maybe top of the tree are the policymakers. And how do you think the policymakers can get your environmental heaven points? I would like some of those as well, but how do you think they can, what kind of policies need to change? Perhaps you can talk about the plastic pact, because that's been a huge movement in Poland, but how do you think they can get those points?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I just want to say in the beginning that within the Polish Plastic Pact, we are not involved in lobbying. Although I absolutely agree that law is probably the most effective tool to make companies make better choices and get this environmental positive points. Definitely, European Union politics on plastics help a lot to change in this example. The way the companies wants to work with plastic, the thinking about plastic. So yeah, it's on the one hand, we can be sometimes frustrated that it has to be law for companies to follow some solutions. But on the other hand, as Joe, you said before, the system we operate now, it's not fair. It pushes us to make sometimes choices that are not good for environment. So the level is not the same for all companies. It's a dilemma many companies faces every day. If I want to introduce solutions that will be good for environment, sometimes it brings you also economical value, but not always. Sometimes you do it only for environmental sake, and it should not be like this. We should have a system where making decisions that are good for environment should benefit you, and that's why we need a circular economy as implemented on the law level. It should not be your choice to make good environmental choices, it should be mandatory.
Thank you. Thanks, Aleksandra. I guess thinking about the work that you've both done with local and global brands, where you've had quite a huge impact, I think, looking at and initiatives with sometimes policymakers, etc. What needs to happen and how does it happen? Have you got any examples where you've worked with a company where you've seen quite a radical impact? To both of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think a number of areas really. What can I say? On plastics, I think the global commitment to end plastics waste is one example. I think there's a long way to go on the plastics challenge, but getting the large producers of plastic packaging to take the milestone around transparency, revealing some of them for the first time, their amount of plastic packaging on market is a first step to moving towards a plastic system in which we eliminate the plastic packaging we don't need, innovate better solutions for those that we do, and circulate the things that are in use. So I think that there's those large convenings that can be hugely influential and really tackle. I think, and I love Aleksandra's first point around collaboration, because I think that's so many of the really knotty challenges that face brands in their transition to a circular economy. So many of those challenges are pre-competitive, and it's much, they'll move much faster and more. Some of these initiatives are much more viable if industry players work together. So something like the global commitment would be one, but then certain brands like IKEA or the packaging company DS Smith spring to mind for me on the design front, where they've said, look, we have an ambition around the circular economy, and they really get that it starts with design. Then developing a circular design strategy. IKEA, for example, have a roadmap, a theoretical roadmap for all of their 10,000 different products to show how they would move to become more circular. So some of those products might be better for repair and resale, some for reuse and refurbishing, some is recovery and recycling. So it gives them a framework through which to innovate and take those products from linear to circular. And then something like, and then with DS Smith, they launched circular design principles for their packaging, and are now working on training and awareness and already seeing those principles be implemented in their products, their cardboard packaging. So I think there are many ways that some of the large brands are taking it, and for me, I always am optimistic when I see the deep understanding at the design stage.
Thanks, Joe. And Aleksandra, do you have some examples that you've worked with?
Yeah, we work with a lot of global brands, and I think some of them are leaders in the sustainable thinking. Some are just starting to change their business strategies. And I think the role of these leaders is very important because they show it's possible. Very often we face with this wall, it's not possible, it cannot be done. Well, it can be done, and then these leaders are showing this is possible, doable, even in Poland, obviously in the country that is not the headquarters of global brands, for example. And nowadays, I think many things that were unthinkable just a year, 2 years, 3 years ago are happening. And it's important that there are a lot of companies that are leading the way for others. And I think companies' non-financial reporting has a huge role here. Companies are more and more companies are reporting, and the indicators are standardized, so you can compare the impact companies have. In Poland, within the 17 Goals campaign, last year we developed Impact Barometer. It's a very simple tool that any company can use for free to measure the impact they have on SDGs. So they can see what impact they have, and also we collect the data and prepare a report what's going on in the market. So that's one of the tools that helps companies measure their impact and helps consumers to see what impact each companies have, because they are including those results in their reports. And I think this development of companies reporting will be also very important.
I think both of you have said, you know, I think there needs to be more of a holistic approach where you don't just look at the product cycle, you're looking at, you know, the designer, and obviously the public plays a role in that, and so do policymakers. And it's really interesting because obviously this is about that creative mix of people coming together to actually look at some of these challenges. Before I go to questions from the audience, I guess another one is, what's the right balance between revisiting kind of old systems and products and trying to change and adapt them to starting with something completely new? Because we're faced with this other dilemma, which is like a lot of these designers, a lot of people are already in this pipeline and have designed a certain way. I mean, I studied architecture 6-7 years, a certain linear way, and I kind of want to go into, let's say, circular thinking, etc. You know, are there easy ways of adapting? I know we have guides, etc. Or is it something, you know, what's that balance between, for larger companies as well, starting new products with those lines and revisiting their older products?
Any preference
Sure.
to
I'm
answer
afraid
that
the
one,
answer.
Pav?
Yeah.
I'm happy to jump in. So there's loads of dimensions here. I think something I hear a bit, or I'm sure those of you, I mean, we were talking about this the other day with Eva and you, Parvinder, that some of the practices or behaviors that are associated with technology, with circular economy, are things that we may have heard people say, oh, that's just how my grandmother used to do it, or my grandparents used to do it, whether that's repairing a piece of clothing until you could no longer wear it, or never wasting a single piece of food, or repairing your television because it was expensive and it was and you really cherished it. There are some of those practices that might seem familiar, but I don't think we should get too attached to or think that this is going back to the way things were, because now we have scientific and technological capabilities that to update those practices and make them frankly unrecognizable to our grandparents, whether that's renting an asset like a car on your phone, and scanning your phone or a card over the windscreen to unlock the car, or going on an app where you can see that someone in your neighborhood is disposing or can't use a loaf of bread or some milk, and then going and collecting it from them. So technology is really means that these practices are being completely reinvented. They're not some retro behavior, even though they may seem like it in some respects. I also think that there is a really important point here about systems innovation that you touch upon with the question, Parvinder, that there are amazing new materials that could be in the next wonder material, could be just around the corner. It could help us address that the food waste challenge that Aleksandra outlined. But we need to be cautious about just dropping a new technology into a system that isn't ready for it. And actually, technological innovation often moves faster than systems innovation. So if you chuck this new amazing material into all the other PET and the other plastics that are out there, it can actually do more harm than good. You could contaminate some fairly established material streams. So I think we absolutely need to keep innovating, keep looking for breakthroughs that enable the circular economy to happen. But also, that's why we always try and be conscious of the wider system, and to think about the wider system, and not pretend that that system doesn't exist. Sometimes when I hear designers or innovators from small and large companies say, almost talk or act in a way that the current status quo doesn't exist. Like, there isn't a large plastics or fashion system. It is there, and we believe that there's a lot we can do to engage with that system and try and make it become circular, rather than trying to imagine it doesn't exist and rebuild something from scratch somewhere else.
Thanks, Joe. I totally agree with you. And I also think it is that kind of, that there's that relationship between the old and new that I always think about, but I also think there are amazing new materials coming into play. And I think it's just going to be time that allows us to see how older ways of doing things either, I don't want to say accelerate into the new, but I think as we build the infrastructure to help that along better, I think there'll be more ways that these materials and these processes can naturally kind of build up. It's quite a scary thought, changing the entire way you think into something that's been linear for so long, into something to do with circularity. But I think that you know, like the work that you and Aleksandra are doing, there are a lot of tools and resources I would encourage people to look at within. We can't, I know we can't talk about them all now, but the coalition work that you've done, Aleksandra, but also the guide that Joe mentioned, that I think is amazing for designers to kind of start that process. And I guess finally, that typical question of kind of, what advice would you give, Joe, for you, to designers and brands, like at this point in time, and to kind of make that shift?
To designers and brands, I think getting over that. I mean, it's kind of cliche, right? But getting started is the most important thing. I think acknowledging that circular design, we talk about, along with IDEO, who we created the circular design guide with a few years ago. One of the kind of principles there, or something we talk about a lot, is that circular design is never finished. And I think once you acknowledge that you're not going to get it right first time, and it's a continual creative journey, a creative endeavor, I think that I hope is empowering to designers, both independent or from small agencies, students, but also designers in organizations. So I think getting started is really the biggest piece of advice. Picking part of the one of your products, or something you're creating, or think about some particular business challenge you're facing, and then trying to zoom in and zoom out, and especially the zooming out, to think about the wider system. Because once you expand the system and are able to visualize it, I'd be very surprised, with almost 80% of physical stuff ending up in landfill or waste. I'd be very surprised if you couldn't identify opportunities for innovation in amongst all that waste and missed opportunity. So I think for me, it's try and understand the system in which you fit, is as an individual or as an organization. That would be my top piece of advice.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to take some of that advice. Aleksandra, what would be your advice for brands and policymakers?
Yeah, I agree with what Joe said, and I would add that it's worth trying. That it's the road may be complicated. You have to measure impact. First of all, you have to see where you are more or less circular to know where to start. But in the end, it's very rewarding. And with the companies we work, we see, we get feedbacks from them that in the end they manage to not only make their products more environmentally friendly, but they get this added value, economic value, that it's very rewarding on also from like strictly business point of view to implement circular innovations. So in the beginning,
Thanks,
it's easy, but it's rewarding. It's worth trying.
It's hard, but I think you guys have got a lot of examples that have been successful. And like I said, I think people research into it, they can see that there's real impact already being made in this industry. And I think it's larger organizations and brands that will take on that role, and designers, which is what a lot of the conversation we're looking at today. Just a couple of questions then from the audience. One is the concept of sharing crucial for circular economy shift?
To me, yes, absolutely. I think on a number of levels, I mean, quite practically, you could, when we think about the things that we use around us. So what's our research from a few years ago, a report we did called Growth Within, suggested, I mean, the example that we really like is a car. Most of us, or a lot of us in Europe, own one. Some people own more than one. But the average car is sat doing absolutely nothing for 92% of the time. For the 8% of time it's in use, about 2% is driving around looking for parking, 1.5% is being stuck in traffic or something like that. And then even when we're driving somewhere from A to B, we're usually using just, on average, 1.5 of the seats in your average car. So all the plastics, metals, rubber, textiles, electronics in a very expensive item are being massively underutilized. They're doing nothing for 92% of the time. So when we think of practical things like that's where, for me, sharing comes in. It's not the only strategy, but it's one that could keep that product in productive use for longer. And that sort of waste, that's not the sort of waste you see in a landfill or in the ocean. We call that structural waste. Like it's often invisible, it's around us, but it's where things are idle or they're underutilized. So that would be one. And then I think there's also a principle about sharing. When we think about collaboration, the sorts of networks we participate in as creatives or as brands, are we just thinking, well, in the markets in which we work and the systems in which we work, is it just extract, or is it is there like some sense of shared value creation? So there's a kind of bigger or maybe more philosophical point here around the way to do business in the 21st century and beyond, which I think places a greater emphasis on generosity and sharing.
Thanks. And Aleksandra, I mean, you do a lot of work with collaboration and sharing. Yeah. How do you feel about that in the Polish context?
Well, so within the 17 Goals campaign, we already have 20 initiatives that brings together a wide range of actors, from government, non-government, business, non-government organizations, and so on. And yeah, it was hard in the beginning, but I think now we also learn from each other how to organize successful initiatives. And we see, for example, with the Polish Plastic Pact, we are the first plastic pact in our region, in this part of Europe. And I strongly believe it's because we have already had this framework of cooperation within the campaign. So many companies in the Plastic Pact already cooperated in other initiatives. So we knew how to do it. So we had some experience. And I think that was one of the most important success factors for the Pact. But yeah, it's said that Poles are not doesn't like so much to cooperate, but we try to change that and to show
Yeah,
it's not necessarily true.
I think countries sharing knowledge, I mean, obviously coming from the British Council point of view, I'm going to say that obviously one of the important things, even looking at the SDGs, is like SDG, right? Supporting kind of the relationships for the goals. So it might have this huge circular economy goal, but it's the relationships within that. And I think we really believe in sharing knowledge like this, even having this panel discussion. You know, there should be a lot more of them where countries share their knowledge, because some of the examples you gave, Alex, were really interesting. They were specific to local context. I think even bringing in the pandemic, I know that sharing knowledge about how things are being dealt with in different countries, it's very specific to geography, it's very specific to the systems that exist, but I think sharing that knowledge is crucial. Now, I'm going to go to the final question so we don't go too much over, but this is an interesting one. It's, which innovation for circular economy do you find most exceptional or most influential? Just a quick point from both of you, if something comes to mind. Which innovation for circular
I mean,
design
there are
or
just
economy?
so many. The one that sprang to mind earlier when I saw the cucumber in plastic on Aleksandra's slide was A-Peel. People may have heard of them. They're a new startup, but they're gaining a lot of attention and interest. They create a second skin for vegetables made from leftover organic waste. So creating packaging essentially from food waste. And to me, that sort of thing is really exciting, and an example of how a lot of this innovation is still to be done. The ideas can be unexpected and hugely creative. So that's one that springs to mind initially, just based on the conversations today. But we need about 4 or 5 more hours to really go through the list.
I love that, Joe. And the cucumber really stayed in my mind too, Aleksandra. So do you have any
I'm happy about this. But actually, regarding this technologies that drive innovation, I would say renewable energy. It's not so specific as your example, Joe, but I really believe that's something super exciting, that one of these technologies that is developing faster than our thinking. And if you think what people were saying, I mean, governments, yeah, and big brands 10 years ago, oh, it's some new technology, it will not become a norm. And what you see now, that renewable energy is the cheapest energy in history. That's, I think, the best example, and the best example of the new technology that is driving circular economy and new economy. And also it has enormous environmental impact.
Thanks, Alex. I think actually it was a great example because you just showed the scales working at, from like going to food and agriculture, renewable energy, to buildings. And I think we've covered quite a few points here, which I hope have been really interesting for the audience. And I am going to wrap this up. I want to say thank you to everyone. I want to say thank you to Eva. Thank you so much to Alex and Joe. You've been amazing. To the translators, because this is being translated, and I think that's really important, because with our cross-cultural work, it's that this message is shared more widely. And I want to thank the City of Warsaw as well, and Michał, for all his comments. It was really inspiring to hear how much Warsaw's already done, and we hope that we'll be hosting future events with you like this. And I guess I'll leave you with something that you know, twice now, it kind of really did stay in my mind, that we're in a creative mix in a way. We're in a really great creative space for this. But almost all of the innovation we need towards a circular economy has yet to be done. So there's a lot of work for us to do. And I'm excited that we can hopefully collaborate on some of those things together. Eva, I don't know if you want to say anything else. Otherwise, I'll just say thank you to the audience for joining us, and I hope it was an inspiring conversation.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone for participation and of course you for taking part in it, and Parv, special thanks to you for moderating. It was for me very inspirational, so I hope that everyone enjoyed it, and I hope that you will be able to carry out and do some more events of that type. So thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. It was great to talk to you.